Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About It. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with my co-host, Dennis O'Brien, and Matt Rupar, the producer. Yeah, but have we got a special guest for you this evening? We have somebody who's done wonderful, wonderful research and has all kinds of things. Chris Rivers from Colchester, and he's here, and he's knocked on many, many doors in the area. And he has so much to tell about his experiences as a child, as somebody who went through college, in the military, and also on the campaign trail. So we are very, very thrilled to have him here. And he will be talking about his book that just got published called You Shouldn't Have to Kill to Get Ahead. So welcome to the show, Chris.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I read the book, and I am just absolutely impressed with the work you've done.
Thank you.
Right, Dennis?
I haven't read the whole book. I didn't have time this week with a busy work schedule, but I read quite a bit of it, and I was really impressed with his earlier years in Naugatuck. I had friends in Naugatuck, and amazing life you've had. I mean, you're a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy.
That's right.
Army. Did you go to those football games?
Went to all the football games. I was on the skydiving team, so we got to skydive into a lot of the football games. Yeah.
Fantastic. That must have been quite an experience.
It was, I joined the skydiving team because I was afraid of heights, and I just wanted to overcome that. And my sort of like teenage brain was just, let me just do it by joining the skydiving team. But got to travel all over the country to jump in the stadiums, compete at the national level, win medals. It was phenomenal.
Wow, I'm afraid of heights. I've never thought about doing that.
Well, I have.
She's not afraid of heights.
I wanted to do skydiving. I never got around to it. I've been always so busy out doing all kinds of other things. But I wanted to get my license, my airplane license, and I also wanted to skydive too. So I've wanted to do those things, but I think I'm running out of time on that end of the deal.
Well,
I think when although Senator Kathy Austin has had a skydiving opportunity where you didn't have to do it on your own. You could skydive with somebody, and I might do something like that. But on the other hand, it may be time for me to pass on with that idea.
Well, she's just like you, Chris. You got to be real busy. You wrote a book, and you've done so many other things in your relatively young life, certainly relative to me, and
me.
You've had a really interesting life. And I'll tell you, the book is, there's biographical material in it. It's very, very interesting about your early struggles and your growing up in a working class family. I did too in New Britain. You mentioned that you were in the post-industrial era. I was in the industrial era when New Britain was full of factories.
Yeah.
And once they left, boy, did it change.
Yeah.
But so did I. I left. I didn't leave because of that, but I came east to go to UConn. Anyway, I found the book incredibly interesting, and the topic in general. I mean, you talk about democracy, and and you're concerned about democracy, and you've talked about it a lot in the book in a very intelligent way, and you also gave some suggestions. And I'll tell you, I think everybody right now, if they're not concerned about democracy in the USA, never mind worldwide, they should be concerned, and I'm really interested in talking to you about that.
Yeah, I'm interested. So why don't we start a little bit with your background, and then move into how we got to where we are today economically, which I found let me just say, the documentation and the data and the graphs in this book are phenomenal. So just start off a little bit about your history and your family and Naugatuck, and then how you got into all these different things that you've done. Phenomenal, and you're still so young.
Well, thank you for that. And as Dennis was saying, Naugatuck is a sort of post-industrial town nowadays. And when I was growing up there, we had a whole bunch of abandoned factories. Abandoned factories are still there. And, I was a kid who grew up in a family who lived very much paycheck to paycheck. And the way that my dad managed money was he went and deposited his weekly check into the bank and then withdrew a certain amount of cash. And that's how much money the entire family had. And so if someone got hurt and had to go to the hospital, all of a sudden you have a co-pay payment. Or if prices went up because of war somewhere else, driving gas prices up, that meant we probably went without a meal. That surprise payments meant you took away from somewhere else. And I think that sort of set in me a sort of inner curiosity about how this all works. No one in my family had gone to college. No one in my family really knew how money worked. And we didn't talk about it. But we also lived a pretty enjoyable life. We played sports. We belonged to a church that I feel like is my extended family. And we didn't really consider ourselves not well off. We were just kind of the same as everyone else around. But I also got to grow up in the pre-internet age, pre-social media age. And so we didn't know what was outside of our bubble. But then as I started growing up, I realized basically two things. I really loved helping people. I learned that from my church days. I learned that from being a Boy Scout. And whatever my future had in store, I wanted to do more of that. I just wanted to help people along the way, and that has been my guiding North Star for my entire life. And then the second thing I learned early on is a lot of the opportunities you have is sort of luck at first. If you're lucky enough to be born into a school district that has the resources and capabilities to actually say, hey, if you want to go to Yale or Harvard, here's how you get there. When I said to my guidance counselor when I was coming out of high school in Naugatuck, hey, I want to go to Yale, they just laughed at me. Like, no one from Naugatuck goes to Yale. He literally laughed at me. And I just got a little chip on my shoulder and said, well, hey, I want to serve the country. I want to help people. 9/11 happened when I was in high school. And I just said, well, this is one way to go get an education and to go help people all at the same time.
Well, you know, that's a common thing that we heard after 9/11 is that so many people, when they found out that the military needed them, they went to serve. And that was one of your guiding things to help the United States of America. And thank you for that. And so tell us some more about what you learned in the military.
Yeah, so in the military, I enlisted and quickly deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom. And there, I learned that the military has amazing people in it. There are amazing people who raise their hands to serve this country from all over the country. And when you get to learn that people from Texas and California and Connecticut can all work together to a common goal, boy, does it let all the noise that we hear in politics today just take a back seat, because the goals that you're trying to achieve are life and death decisions, and it really gets you out of the Connecticut bubble that I grew up in into a different culture, and you learned the most important thing, I think, which is no matter where we are in the world, human beings have way more in common than we have that divides us.
That's right, that sense of team.
No doubt about it. Can I ask you a question about your military? Did you join the National Guard before you ended up going to the military academy?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
so you started out in the National Guard.
That's right.
Okay, but when you went overseas and you were at war, you were an officer. You had graduated from the military.
So at my
West Point.
So my first deployment was as an enlisted soldier with the Connecticut National Guard.
Right.
And I took my SATs in Kuwait, applied for West Point from Kuwait and Iraq.
Oh, so you were already over there as an enlisted man.
That's right.
So you know what it's like to be an enlisted man.
Yep.
I know that because I was an enlisted man. I was drafted in the early part of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I did not go to war, but I was in 64, 66. Okay, but I know what it's like, and I'll tell you, the Army turned my life around because I was really not going anywhere with my life. I didn't take full advantage of my education in school. I just did not. I didn't work hard. I was a B student. Could have been an A student, but I didn't. But as soon as I got in the Army, I started thinking about what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and bingo. It was good for me.
Yeah.
And so go ahead. Please tell us some more about your experience and how you got to West Point and all that.
Yeah, so I took my SATs in the middle of Kuwait in between military missions, ended up getting accepted, got my offer letter literally while sitting in the desert in northern Kuwait on my rotations back and forth.
That had to be kind of weird.
It was incredibly weird. What was even more weird was trying to come home and become a student all over again.
Yes.
Because you go from, all right, I'm a high school student, now I'm in a combat theater, now I'm back to being a college student, whatever that means.
Right.
And not only just a college student, but a college student at a military academy.
An extraordinary college experience it had to be.
Phenomenal college experience,
Definitely.
but boy, do they figure out a way to pack 30 hours of work into every 24 hours.
I bet.
And you learn life skills, you develop lifelong friends, you get opportunities to join the skydiving team, you get opportunities to go study at the national labs. I studied physics and nuclear engineering as my majors. West Point is America's first engineering school. I love math, I love engineering, and I thought I could use those skills to go continue to help people. And coming out of West Point, by the way, I should also mention I had one date with my now wife at West Point. She's also a West Point grad.
Oh, fabulous. Wow, that is great. Very, very nice.
It is really hard to date at West Point, so we only have one date there.
Well, good to know.
You've done good, man. You've done good.
But anyway, but you did talk a little bit about, and it's right in the title of your book, you shouldn't have to kill to get ahead. And so when you were serving in the military before you went to West Point, you had an experience with, having to defend yourself and kill to make sure that you were saving not just yourself but all the people you were working, your teammates or your soldiers that you were with.
Yeah, and I wrote about what that was like from a personal experience.
Correct. Yes, and I thought I've never seen anybody write about that, and I thought that was an excellent thing to do.
Thank you. I actually went back and forth with my editor for a little while on how to cover this stuff, because you can kind of cover it from a third-party perspective. What was it like to be sort of looking over my shoulder the entire way, play by play, which is how we watch war movies. It would be very normal for readers to hear that. But I think veterans in general, we have this culture where those of us who's actually been on the front lines, we tend to not talk about it. It's not comfortable to talk about. Most of my family never learned how to ask about it. I never really moved forward to try to tell them about it. And it was just this sort of awkward silence that filled the void, right?
Yep.
And I figure with writing this book, I'm just trying to put, for the memoir part, all the cards on the table, because I know I have biases when I start to do the political analyses. We all do.
Of course.
Yep.
You can't escape it.
Right.
But here are all my biases on the table. And one of them, to your point, Susan, is just when you ask these young people who are at the very beginning of their lives to go overseas, to go fight in wars, we better know what we're fighting for, because the weight you're taking on will last the rest of your life.
Yes.
And I wanted people to come kind of inside my head, inside my emotions of what it was like to deal with that as a, frankly, teenager when I started. And even as a young Army officer, not just making those decisions myself, but also overseeing soldiers who are then making those decisions. And also, by the way, carrying that weight for the rest of their life. And so it's one of the things I think, or I hope, comes across as incredibly sobering for readers, to just understand what we are asking of America's young people over and over and over again for the global war on terror that has been going on for 26 years.
Well, the other thing about that is that so many few people in this country have ever served in the military.
Yeah,
We have
at this
such
point,
a
yes.
and to not have served, and then and even fewer people who serve don't serve in a war, in a conflict situation, which is going to be, I mean, to my way of thinking, it's going to be absolutely horrifying. It's just something that I don't think that we think of it in movies, and I think that all of us think too much about our lives as being a movie and not reality.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's a real price to pay for thinking of it like that. And we'll get to it in a little bit, I'm sure. But one of the calls to action at the end is for people who are sitting on the sidelines, get off the sidelines, because there's real stakes involved. If it's not for you, it's for one of your family members. If it's not for them, it's one of the people you know. Yes, there's about 1% of the U.S. population who serves in the military. But over the course of a 25-year-long global war on terror, whatever is happening now in the Middle East, like, that number adds up. And oh, by the way, we have previous generation of veterans who fought in Vietnam, Korea. The World War II generation is largely
Yeah, my father, World War II, my grandfather, World War I, my uncle, Korean War. He served, in Ireland, so he always says I wasn't in the direct war, but I was in Ireland, and I know Dennis always says he served stateside. And
Well, there's a big difference between serving stateside and going to war.
right,
Sure.
It's got to be.
yeah.
I knew a lot of guys that had been to war when I was in the Army, and I heard some stories, but you're right. Most people don't want to talk about it.
But my father was actually in the Pacific Theater after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but nevertheless helping to clean up Pearl Harbor. There, when the atomic bomb testing was, watched his friend go down in the ship that was next to his, and passed because of a kamikaze pilot. And so these were the things that he came back with, but he didn't share that with the family. He shared
Right.
it with his neighbor, the guy next door. And so I didn't find out about it. He died when I was 5. So I never learned about that until I ended up being old enough to be with a neighbor next door one day, and he came and told us all the stories that my father told him. So anyway, that's too much about me, but I just wanted to let you know that I was quite impressed with the fact that you did do that, and that you talked about the impact that it had. And it's going to have, I mean, that's one of the things when people serve in wars and they're veterans together, you really understand what you've been through. You get it. And so many people that haven't really don't, I don't think, get it.
Yeah, the bonds you form when you're in a combat zone with your fellow soldiers is hard to describe. It is, in some cases, stronger than family bonds. And if families went through the tragedy of war, you would probably know a little bit more what it would be like. But at the end of the day, some of the soldiers I served with, whether I was an officer or when I was enlisted, are the lifelong friends I have to this day. Very varied across the political spectrum. We live in all parts of the United States, and we still connect with each other, because you're exactly right. It is really hard. I mean, my wife, also a West Point grad, also has deployed multiple times. Her deployments were incredibly different than mine, and sometimes it's even tough for us to correlate experiences.
Sure.
And so the easiest thing for us to do as veterans, I think, is stay in that group of people we deployed with and just share the stories there. But then they never get out. And the American people, I think, deserve to know more broadly what it's actually like on the ground.
Yeah, they wouldn't be so willing, perhaps, to be in the circumstances we're finding ourselves in today.
Exactly.
If in fact they had served. So moving along, though, I thought that was really incredibly helpful to help for the people to look at this book. And then going into the things that you did in your life and how you got to the point where you started going to school and you started learning about how our economy was shaped. And it's one of the things that I've said a lot, but I'm not going to say. I'm going to leave that to you. Talk about how the economy is formed to where we are today, because you have a lot of great charts and graphs. And I think it started around 1981.
We got the
book.
biographical stuff. Tell us about the rest of the book.
Yes.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're here for. We want to
Fair.
hear all about it.
Yeah.
The pivot.
We want our listeners to hear all about it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And the pivot point here is I really studied as a physicist, someone who really used math to understand what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Afghanistan, when my trucks got blown up, soldiers got medevaced out. They all survived. Several of them had surgeries. One lost a leg. And it was there where I realized I didn't know how our government worked. I didn't understand how our economic system worked. I didn't understand the basic reasons of why we were still there 10 years after we invaded. And that set me on this track to go try to figure that out, go study. And the Army brought me to Washington, D.C. for my final tour of duty on active duty. I went to Georgetown to go get a couple master's degrees. And while I was there, I got access to some of our nation's best economists and professors to really go understand how do we get to now. And the thing that after the 2024 election, I was kind of taking all of that world-class education, wondering, why is everyone so mad? And there's a real palpable madness at the polls when I was standing out there for Election Day. And that's when I started to peel the onion back. And just whenever you peel the economic onion back in our country, you end up with one origin source. But in order to understand the origin source, let's just say post-World War II to 1981-ish, we had the Great Compression. We had policies in place from Democrats and Republicans that basically said we're going to use the power of government to support working class people. And from that experiment, we've had an economic environment that wasn't perfect. There were still issues in the country and racial issues and everything else. But we had the largest middle class. We had the strongest middle class. We still had rich people. We still had poor people. But we had more access to education, more access to the things that would actually make a difference in your economic life than ever before. The thing that changed in 1981 was President Reagan and his entire theory of economics that he instituted through what I call Reaganomics. Most people in the sort of academic world call it Reaganomics. And we went from a theory of government that says government should help working class people to a theory of government that says we need to minimize government. We need to get out of the way of people who are inherently better and smarter than anyone in government could be. And we're going to do things like really bring down the top tax rates. We're going to do things like deregulate how companies are run. We're going to do things like basically put into our tax law that the way our economic system should be organized is around an idea called shareholder supremacy, which just means before 1981, publicly traded companies had to balance the long-term benefits of their employees. So we had pensions, we had training programs, we had a whole bunch of stuff. They had to invest in their local communities. So a local school going to their local company asking for donations was totally normal. They had to balance the long-term health of their own company. So things like long-term research and development was part of their bottom line. And they had the shareholder returns that they also wanted to balance. Well, we took one of those shareholder returns and made that the only thing that they get to manage off of. And you know what? It worked incredibly well. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to draw up a system that says, hey, every economic engine in our country just needs to maximize profit returns, well, from 1980 to now, we've doubled the profit margins in this entire country. And as much as some people talk about taxation as theft, no one's talking about the fact that last year we had $4 trillion in corporate profits that the American people paid into. $2 trillion of that is more than what we would have paid in 1980 if we would have kept the margins all the same. And so while the federal government brings in $4 to $5 trillion worth of revenue, there's another $2 trillion revenue extra that we're paying that no one's talking about.
This is so important to have people understand, because that $2 trillion certainly would be a great way to start getting rid of our debt.
Absolutely. And, oh, by the way, if you can say, someone out there might be listening and saying, well, that I don't know how to make sense of trillions of dollars. And I get it. It's a big number. It's bigger than our state government.
Well, take a dollar. Right? What do they say? Take the dollar bills and line them up all the way to the moon and back. It's something like that. Yeah.
It is something like that.
Yeah.
the other thing to know is we also made legal for the first time in American history in the 1980s stock buybacks.
Yes.
And so the idea that a publicly traded company can look around to say, hey, where should I invest? Should I invest in my people, in my facilities and whatnot? And they say, no, actually the best investment is to buy back my own stock, which does nothing, economically speaking, except for the people who already own the stock. And to put that $2 trillion in sort of some sort of scope, know that in last year, roughly 990 something billion of that was all corporate buybacks of their own stock that did nothing for us economically as working class people.
Exactly. And that really raises the cost. So it makes it very hard for people to buy into the stock market as well, because it raises the cost of the stocks.
It raises the cost of the stocks. It raises the cost of everything you buy.
And it does not actually help with the business that you're representing in terms of the shareholders to any great degree, because it's not expanding that particular business, which is the original intent, is my understanding of the stock market, is to invest in the business, have the shareholders investing in the business.
That's the excuse they use to sell it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we start to institute things like 401ks instead of having pensions.
Right.
And now all of a sudden working class people's retirements are tied up in this sort of scheme. But when you look at the S&P 500 of the 500 largest companies on the stock market, the top 10% own over 90% of it. So when you see the stock market go up,
say that again. I want you to say that again, because I don't think we don't emphasize that enough.
Sure. So of the stock market, the top 500 companies, the S&P 500, the top 10% economically in our country own well over 90% of the entire stock market.
Correct. Yeah, that's stunning. That's stunning.
Yeah, and so I get it for the working class person who's out there looking at their 401k, hoping to retire one day, and are really tied up in how the stock market's doing. I get it. But know that all these policies who go to maximize that same stock market is really benefiting the top 10%, like 9 times more than it's benefiting you.
Absolutely, and it's so. The other thing is the education about the stock market and how that works versus other types of. One thing you go into is the credit card industry, for example, and how they really increase inflation, because people realize that, if I have a bill, I got to pay the interest on it, but they don't realize that every time you charge something, you're 2 to 5% of that charge of that money goes to the bank or the business that has the stock market, and it doesn't go to the restaurant or the place where you're buying your clothes. And that adds to inflation big time, but we don't ever stop to talk about that, and you put that in your book.
Yeah, so the average charge that a credit card company will pay for every fee is about 3%, which if everyone starts using their credit card, which nowadays I'm not blaming anyone for using their credit card.
I'm not either. I try not to, but then again, it's convenient.
It is awfully convenient, but the fee you're paying is about 3%, and if everyone's doing that, then the prices inflate 3% more.
Right.
And it's not the local storekeeper that's benefiting from it. It's not you that's benefiting from it. It's this whole other middleman that we stood up, which actually makes the entire system less efficient. Another one that I didn't really point to in the book, but is definitely top of mind for me now, look at healthcare costs.
Yeah.
And in the 1980s, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually, part of the Reagan Revolution in Reaganomics is we went from a mostly nonprofit healthcare insurance industry in this country to a for-profit healthcare insurance company, with the overall idea that it would be way more cost-effective, it would be way more efficient, it would be way more effective. Well, we've had that system now for 40 or so years. And what I can tell you is the overhead of these private healthcare insurance companies is something like 20 to 30%. The other countries who made different decisions to be just treated as a public good, their overhead is like 5 to 6%.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Let me just say this. When they call it the cost ratio analysis, and so the cost ratio analysis for the Medicare program, for example, which is the public health insurance, is 5%, just like the other countries. It's between 5 and maybe even 6% sometimes, depending on the cost of whatever it is they're paying. But when you take a look at the medical loss ratio for the private sector insurance medical loss ratio, there is, like you said, up to 20% for it to be allowed. Now, and then we have a whole lot of other things, which I won't get into because I could go off on health insurance for a long time. But anyway, that's an excellent point, and it's something that people don't understand. And I was just having this argument or discussion in the Human Services Committee when we have one side talking about how we want to make sure that we keep the private sector insurance going, and but they never ever raised the idea of the medical loss ratios and the differences between if it was public, it's 5%, but if it's private, it's 20%.
Well, and that's all before you even get to how much profit these private healthcare insurance companies are making every year.
Correct. Yes.
Which is on top of all that.
Exactly. All right.
Okay, it's time to take a break. We're here with Chris Rivers. He's talking about his book, and I'll tell you, everybody should get this book. It's a fantastic book. It's semi-autobiographical, but that sets the stage for why you're doing what you're doing, and you're certainly doing a great job of explaining the situation that changed radically in the 1980s. That gave us a situation today. The economy today is so much tougher than it was when I was a kid, and my family had next to nothing. But you know what? We were happy. I mean, relatively happy. We weren't up against it in danger of homelessness or anything like that. And it's so much different now. Anyway, Chris Rivers' book is
You Shouldn't Have to Kill to Get Ahead.
Okay.
And we will be right back after these messages.
Yep.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with my co-host, Dennis O'Brien, and our very special guest this evening, Chris Rivers, who wrote this fabulous book that'll explain everything about what's going on right now in this country and everything that's gone on for the last 40 years or so. And the book is called You Shouldn't Have to Kill to Get Ahead. And this is reimagining wealth, power, and belonging in America. And getting to the point in the book that we talk about understanding wealth, power, and belonging in America. This is the second part of your book, and it's really, we were just talking a little bit about how we got to where we were and the Reaganomics aspects. But, you know, how this thing about meritocracy, this thing that we have told everybody, this thing that one of the things that I learned when I was taking economics in college was there's no such thing as a free market. Yoo-hoo. So we want to go into that one?
Yeah, happy to. So it's funny that in sort of politics and in normal everyday culture, we throw around these economic terms without knowing what they're meaning. And I was guilty of that when I was younger.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, like you, I was in this economic classes. And in economics is all about using math to have models about human behavior. And at the end of the day, for any of these models to work, you have to have a whole bunch of assumptions. And the assumptions that go into the free market model, if they hold true, the theory holds. And the theory is, and I'll go back to the assumptions in a second because that's the important part, but the theory is basically supply and demand will create an equilibrium and it will be the most efficient and effective market you could possibly have. This is the entire talking point of the modern day Republican Party, that everything needs to be a quote unquote free market because it's the most efficient and effective system we could possibly have. The problem with that is in the assumptions. And the assumptions, and I'll just rattle off a few, I won't rattle all of them off, but it's that both buyers and sellers have to have perfect information on what the market is doing at any given time. Another assumption is it has to be a perfectly competitive market. So for a seller, that means if someone can sell, we'll just use an ice cream sandwich because economic courses always use ice cream sandwiches for some reason. But if a seller can sell for a cent less, they will sell for a cent less, and people will choose to go there. That drives down prices. Another assumption that is made in the free market system or the free market economics of it all is that part of the perfectly competitive part means that people can enter and leave the market whenever they want. And just those three ideas alone in the real world don't exist. Last time you went to buy a car, did you really know what the actual inventory markup was? Did you actually know the entire history? Nowadays it's a little better. If you're actually going out to buy an ice cream sandwich, do you know what every ice cream truck is actually selling their ice cream sandwiches for? No, of course you don't. And then in the market today, and here's like the biggest one that I'm mostly worried about, is the perfectly competitive market, and that sellers and buyers can leave and enter the market whenever they want. While through the deregulation that Reagan brought in, we allowed companies to merge and become these mega conglomerations. So now we have monopolies. And the fact is a lot of our companies actually are not competing with anyone. And that is true oftentimes at a local level, it's true at a national level. And it's really hard for mom and pop shops to keep up with the Walmarts of the world, with the Amazons of the world, because there isn't a competition for them. And if you don't have competition, the entire idea of the free market as it's preached by the Republican Party just goes out the window.
Let me just say something about that, because it's one of the things that I don't think people really understand when they buy something from Amazon online, and that is the erosion of the property tax base in the town. The property tax base comes from the residents and the businesses. One of the kerfuffles we've run into this last time where we've done the revals is the fact that the cost of the residential properties have gone skyrocketing, yet the businesses have stayed fairly stable. And so the cost of the residential properties and the mill rates in terms of your tax bill have gone up. Now, some people try to attribute it to doing more development or more, renovations and so on and so forth. No, it has to do with the fact we have such a housing shortage, and the values of the houses have gone up so high, yet the businesses have stayed pretty much the same. And that, in part, is because of places like Amazon. Buying things online like that has really created a problem in terms of the property tax base.
Well, it bears out some of what you said. I mean, they're so big, they sell a lot of items at a very low price. And people are going to go there. Once they get something for a really cheap price, they're going to start buying on Amazon all the time. And that's and it's convenient and all that, but it's a real bad situation. The problem is, I think, people blame more and more. People blame the government instead of blaming the government. They should be blaming the private sector. And if there's any quasi benevolent force in America that can, I'm getting a little bit ahead of where you are in talking about your book. It is the government. If it's quasi beneficent, it's more so than the private sector. It thinks about doing things for the good of the general population instead of just selfish interests. And that is I've never seen. I've been involved in politics 45 years. I've never seen so much mistrust of the government at all levels of government, and that's not good. Anyway, you'll probably get to that.
Well, we'll definitely get to it because at the end of the day, I really believe that government is the one and only institution we have that represents all of us. And what they do is on behalf of all of us. And the fact is that our approach to politics, our approach to government for the last 40 years has largely been in service of the rich and the powerful to keep their profit margins up, to keep all of the Reaganomics revolution alive and well, which is why we have so much money in politics today.
That's right. I mean, it was the government that did reverse the way that the money is distributed under Reagan.
Yeah.
And so that is, but we haven't corrected it yet. And people say, why do you keep talking about Reagan? Well, because we haven't changed the policies yet. And until we do change those policies, it still goes back to Reaganomics. Of course, some of the policies have been enhanced as well.
A lot of them have been enhanced. Every time a Republican president has come in and done a massive tax cut for the rich, whether it was the Bush tax cuts, the Trump 1.0 tax cuts, the very first thing he did the second time around, massive tax cuts for the rich while cutting benefits to working class people. And you can sit around and say, boy, I wish we could live in a world where we didn't need to have benefits. And as a Christian, I want to live in that world too.
Sure.
But we've been struggling with that fight for 2,000 years. Like, there are people who are struggling deserve to have a sort of minimum level of support where you can't fall so far down you can't get yourself back up. I think that's what it used to mean to be American, but we've kept this sort of all or nothing sort of politics for so long that it all gets hidden behind these vernacular and these things, ideas like the free market that never quite get explained by the talking points. They never quite get into the nitty gritty of what it actually means for people. And then we also have a political class in our country that are genuinely professional fundraisers because of how much money plays a role in national politics.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm specifically talking about national politics, not state politics right now, because we have a citizen election program here in Connecticut and other approaches to it. We have some of the most aggressive campaign finance laws in the country.
It's helpful, yeah.
It's helpful, but at the national level, we don't have any of that. And 97% of people who win their race, whether they're Democrat or Republican, have more money than the other side.
Well, you've got the Citizen United decision, which is awful.
Right.
And by the Supreme Court.
Right, which is in the book why I talk about and kind of tee up the economic system. And once you get through that chapter, I hope that most readers will say, how is this allowed to exist in a country that is supposed to be built on the will of the people? That's why our Constitution starts with we, the people, right? And at the end of the day, the answer is money is in politics. And that's the sort of second chapter in that pulling the curtain back of why hasn't this been fixed yet? And at the end of the day, a lot of people at the national level, every president who's won or every presidential candidate who's won since the end of the Cold War have successfully positioned themselves to be the change candidate. People are voting for change, but nothing ever seems to change.
Right. And
Not
it's
for
the
the
type
better.
of change, and understanding what kind of change you need. Because if you don't understand where we are, like you say in your book, understanding how we got to this, then you may vote for change, but you're not going to actually effectuate change. You'll just continue the current circumstances without making the change for the people that are the middle class and working class and people that used to have an opportunity to get ahead. And that is really something that people need to understand. And I love the way you put this together in the book, because it's really a great, great, great read. It's a fast read. And you wouldn't think it would be with all the technical stuff,
No,
but it's a very in the
it's
charts
fast.
and graphs. But you document everything with all your economic people that you worked with to help create this, and it's just absolutely fabulous. But I do want to get to the point, though, to where we deserve better, and some of your vision for the future.
Yeah, and I really think, and this is where a lot of the political books I've read, because I've been sort of a political book junkie for the last 10 years. A lot of people in politics love to try to diagnose a problem, and you run in that problem, and then they never want to hold up the solution because they never want to be wrong.
Right.
And I just figured where I'm at in my life, if I really want to keep helping people, I need to take a stand in what I think the answers are. And when you get to part 3 of the book, for everyone who's going to read it, just know it's not all or nothing. It's a whole list of policy ideas that could fix a lot of the problems that I think we have, but there's also a lot of wiggle room in there. It's not take it or leave it. It's not the Rivers agenda or anything like that. It's just trying to make a point, and we can get through a couple of them, that just says a couple things. One, if you get through part 2 of the book and you realize the reason why things are so unequal, the reason why we have so much economic inequality now, we have more economic inequality in our country right now than what led up to the French Revolution. That should get everyone pause.
That's correct.
And we have that because of decisions that were made 40 years ago and decisions to reinforce those decisions over the course of those 40 years. And so the solution is either we can wait for it to become so untenable that people choose to correct it themselves. That usually leads to war and depression and terrible cause for human society, or we can make better decisions. And all of part 3 is an idea of some better decisions. And the first one, I think, has to start with getting money out of politics if you're going to start anywhere, because then you can actually have representatives down in D.C. who are a lot more free to talk about what the actual solutions are. You can talk about things like bringing back a more progressive tax system to actually tax the wealthy in a way that is fair for the benefits you're receiving from society. You can ask for a billionaire tax refund for the $50 trillion worth of wealth that has been redistributed from the bottom 50% to the top 1%, and have that pay down our $40 trillion national debt over 20 or 30
I would
years.
love that so much. Yes.
You're right.
Right?
That's great.
Like, that is hanging all over our heads, and for
Yes.
far too long it's used as a political football down in D.C., and no one's actually solving it.
Right.
We need to start solving it.
The Supreme Court had a hand in this as well. I mean, even going back to the 70s, they said free speech is, money. And once that was done, that created a real problem for the campaigns. And then it was made even worse in the current Supreme Court, in the one where Justice Roberts has changed a lot of the access to resources as well. So that now you can actually, they don't monitor where the money comes from, for example. They just say, okay, yeah, you have to just say it's not for a political candidate, it's just about an idea. And then the next thing you know, that billions of dollars are being spent on the idea, and they're not monitoring where the money came from. So it can come from anywhere in the world.
I think in order to fix those 2 things you mentioned, I think we need to to take make the same kind of commitment that this country made years ago to public education. That's really, really important. We need an educated population, even more so than ever, because there's so much more to know now. And I think if people if people really want to know about this stuff, all you got to do is read Chris Rivers' book.
Right.
He's got it down. He's got it down.
He sure does.
And if everybody would think about that and understand what he's saying about the way things are, the way they used to be, and the way they are now, and how it's developing, and it's not getting better, folks. It's getting worse, and it will continue to get worse unless people think about it and start trying to do something about it politically, and change the government so that the government, which is a quasi-beneficent operation, will fix these things and benefit everybody, because we are losing our middle class. No doubt about it. We've lost a lot of it already. It's understandable to me why people are so angry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I totally get the anger. And
Oh, I do
from
too, yeah.
my runs for state rep, and even though I was a Democrat running a very Republican state house district, I knocked on a lot of doors that were MAGA doors. I knocked on a lot of Republican doors. Knocked on a lot of Democrat and progressive doors. The one thing in common across the board is people are really struggling with affordability. It's not a talking point. It's not some scheme that you might hear some people refer to down in D.C. It is a real struggle.
It's real.
And some people are stuck in homes that were too big that they bought right before the 2008 financial crisis because we never did anything to bail out the homeowner. And they're angry about that, and I get that anger. And so the point I try to make is the anger I get, the choice to go with President Trump a second time, I don't understand, especially because I think a lot of his policies just throw a lot more wood onto this fire, making everything actually harder to solve than it was before.
I won't get into that now because you probably know how I feel about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also think there's plenty of blame to go around with the National Democratic Party and falling short of actually trying to solve these problems for 4 decades.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to point to any one individual person,
Right.
but when the Democratic Party at the national level basically said, hey, the way we're going to fight politically in our campaigns, all of this money coming in from corporations to support Republicans, is we're going to go fight a bad guy with $1 billion to go find a good guy with $1 billion and have them support us.
Right.
And at the end of the day, by the way, there are some billionaires who are good people. I'm not saying they're all bad.
Right.
But when you have that much wealth, your interest in how you view the world is inherently different than people who are working for a living. It just is.
It couldn't possibly
As
be
different as
the
it could
same at all.
possibly be.
Because they have never ever had to figure out, how they're going to get their next meal, or how they're ever going to get that money for the down payment, or whether they're going to be able to get through college or not, because they're not going to be able to afford the tuition.
Yeah.
I want you to wrap up now because we're running down to our last 2 minutes.
I just want to say one thing. Chris Rivers' book, You Shouldn't Have to Kill to Get Ahead, is a must for everybody to read. We're going to have him back.
Yes,
if
we
he's
are.
willing to come back, I want to have him come back. I want to continue to talk about this with Chris Rivers. And so everybody who's listening to us will better understand the situation that we're in because he's got it figured out. And we are in trouble. This country is in real trouble, and you know it. And there is a way to get out, but it's not going to be easy. Everybody has to pitch in. We have to take more of an interest, and Chris Rivers is going to finish the show.
I'll happily come back. And a finishing note, just know you're part of the solution. Showing up to vote, being a more demanding customer of what our democracy is providing to you is the absolute answer. In 2024, we have more people that didn't vote than voted for either candidate. We need more people to show up to vote. If we can convince 10 people who didn't vote, or 10% to show up to vote, you would change politics for a generation. That's a huge part of the answer. A way to get informed is by reading the book.
Yes, it is. And I want to thank you so much, Chris Rivers. You shouldn't have to kill to get ahead. This is a fabulous book, everybody. And we want to make sure you get a copy of it. How do you get it?
Go to chrisrivers.com. All the places where it's sold is there, and you can get an audiobook now, too.
All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. And we have a great show for you next week.